Okay. Well, thank you for joining us. I have as a guest on Restorative Divorce Podcast a friend of mine, Jennifer Lee, and she is an author and founder of Modern Wealth, and she has 30 years of experience in the financial industry. But rather than me talk about all the great things that you do, I thought maybe you could give us a little bit of background on what you do and how you work with clients.
Sure, absolutely. 30 years, you're making me sound old. I guess we got to get to a point of wisdom in our life. So I've been in the financial services industry since as long as I can remember. My father was in the industry and I used to go on appointments with him as a little kid. So it's in my blood. It's a comfort
Wow.
level for me. Talking about money is kind of fun. It's not something that stresses me out. It's if you grab me at a cocktail party and you want to chat about your accounts or what your retirement plans are or a business strategy, I'm excited. A little nerdy, I get it. That's okay. I'll accept that. But finance is easy for me and a comfort zone for me. So I try to make it palatable for my clients because I find that most people are not that comfortable when it comes to money. Often it
Yeah.
all boils down to what is your historical money story? What's your first relationship with money? And so I try to make it palatable to get you what you want in life.
Yeah. And was that the motivator? I briefly said that you're an author and you have a fabulous book, Squeeze the Juice, that you have for the general public and for your clients, and is a valuable resource for family law practitioners to provide to their clients as well. Was was that your motivator for being an author and for preparing such a great resource for people that they're uncomfortable with talking about finances and maybe they can read about it or learn more about it so that they're more comfortable?
Yeah, I appreciate your asking that. It's really, I guess the purpose of it was twofold. One, I was trying to get it into the hands of the right person. And a colleague of mine said, you need to write a book. And I joked with her and I said, I'd rather do your tax returns. I didn't think of myself as somebody who was an author or had things I wanted to put down on paper and communicate. But the truth of the matter is, these are all topics and conversations that we have, over the length of our career. And there are themes, right? There are themes throughout the people you interact with that are consistent challenges. So if I can make something less threatening and easier for somebody to absorb, that's really the gift, right? So that's truly why I did the book.
And like I said, it is a great resource for people. I was so thrilled when you sent a copy my way because I can, just going through it, I can see so many people that this could benefit. Um, and, in particular, there you have a lot of information in here, but you also have some like tips and tools for what people can maybe do at home to either raise their awareness about their situation or their goals or their perhaps financial purpose and what they want to do. And I should mention for our listeners that. If you're a client of mine or if you're working with me in Illinois, Jennifer can help you as well. You can help anybody throughout the country, I would imagine. But
I have
um,
clients all over the place.
yeah, so if you're listening to this applies to everybody that is going through maybe a life challenge, facing divorce, or maybe it's even after divorce when you're now responsible for some of the financial uh, decision making or goal setting that maybe you weren't a part of when you were married or in a relationship. So I just wanted to point that out there that this applies to anybody that's listening and not just necessarily people in Chicago or people in my local area. Um, Jennifer and I could help you as you're facing some of these life challenges. But in particular, the chapter in your book, chapter 3, Are You an Ostrich? Um, I love that visual. I love that illustration of assuming maybe you or maybe somebody put their head in the sand for a little bit, and maybe there's reasons behind that. But I do think a lot of us have that fear of, I don't really know much, so maybe I'm not going to reach out to a financial professional, or maybe I don't know what to say or I don't know what to talk about because I don't feel like I know enough. Would you mind expanding on this chapter and this concept for our
Sure.
listeners?
Absolutely. You know, a lot of times when I would do a talk about money concepts, and I would bring up the idea of the ostrich, I would say, you know, if I start talking about asset allocation and retirement income and your 401k and different components of your financial picture, um, are you going, oh no, I don't want to deal with this, or this is too much for me to be addressing right now? And most people, you know, will say, oh my gosh, you were talking to me. I thought you were talking specifically to me. Um, I just find that oftentimes, no, in marriages and relationships, we divide and conquer, right? Not everybody has to be the money person. Not everybody has to be the handy person. You know, we divide and conquer, and that's how relationships work. And sometimes when they end, or sometimes when there's a big shift in your life, you need to make changes and you need to become more aware. So, Are You an Ostrich is just kind of getting you clear about using money as a tool, right? It's not, it doesn't have to be this intimidating thing like you have to understand all the ins and outs and the details of the jargon I just mentioned, right? You just have to
Yeah.
know, what do you have? What is your income? What are your assets? What are your resources? And what do you want? And our job as an advisor is the in between. We're going to make it as efficient as possible and help you understand how you can leverage money to facilitate your life.
Yeah. And facilitate your life. I think you made a point in your book where you were talking about it might not be that we just don't have a financial education, that we're an ostrich, but that we focus on tasks at hand. I know I can spend so much at the grocery store right now in this economy. Maybe I've changed my budget a little bit. I know that I'm saving up for my kids' football, soccer, hockey, anything of that sort, because it's a task that I'm going to check off, and it's a plan that I have for my immediate tasks now. But I could be an ostrich if I'm not thinking about my 401k or my investments, or how can I maximize perhaps maybe what I might get or ask for in a divorce, right? So it doesn't have to be that complete blindness to a financial situation. It just might be, you're doing the best you can and you're focusing on your tasks right now, but we need to translate maybe some tasks towards the future. At least
It,
that's what I got out of some
no,
of the information that I read.
you're very right. So planning for the long term is important. It's not urgent, right? It's
Mm,
urgent because you have, you know, the shorter term things, making sure you have money for your kids' basketball camp, making sure you have food on the table, all those things, you have to pay them. It's urgent, it's timely.
yeah.
Planning to fund your 401k or consider a Roth as an option, how to allocate that for your long-term goal. Because by the way, the reason you're doing that is so you can stop working. The idea
Mm,
of putting money into those plans, I like to use, and there's an analogy in the book. I talk about building your machine. You're buying each month, you're buying little nuts and bolts, you're buying little pieces of a machine. If you put a little bit of money in there, when you retire, you call me or whoever your advisor is, and you say, I'm leaving work, turn on my machine. And if it's a little machine, we can kick out a little bit of money. If it's a big machine, we have more money to kick out, right? So it's a matter of what is it that you want to have in your future. You need to let time help you, and the sooner you get started, the happier you'll be when it comes
yeah.
time for retirement.
And just as important as making that maybe monthly installment payment towards camps or other things, you're making perhaps installment payments towards your future. And we need to change our perspective so that we are building that machine. That's a great analogy. I really, really love that. And I think that um, anybody facing a life change can understand that feeling of rebuilding, creating, restoring. and making sure that their future has something that's usable.
I
Do you,
find that people that
yeah.
are, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, it makes me think of sometimes, and maybe that's what the ostrich analogy also could be about, is that fear.
For
There might
sure.
be a certain amount of fear of the future, and I just need to get through now. But that's always a good reason to have a financial professional to help you see more clearly what the future could
I,
hold.
I, I think that people do have fear, and fear is false evidence appearing real, right?
Yeah.
So they have fear of, an attorney is going to be too expensive. They have fear of, I don't know enough information to have a conversation with an advisor. So I know that that is a pause point, and that gives you pause and hesitation. But there's no harm in having an initial conversation and having kind of a framework of discussion. That's really also what the book is for. It's a non-threatening introduction, right, to thinking about things so that you can have perspective. Because a lot of times my clients will come to me, or prospective clients will come to me, and I'll be walking them through the different phases of the book, because that's part of the process. I need to understand, what do you have and what do you want? I need to understand, okay, well, what is your story about money? Well, my Aunt Sarah was, very stingy about money because she didn't have any. And so I'm nervous about spending it. And so everybody has their perspective, the lens from which they learned. And so it helps me to understand that, so I can talk you through those things to make your money work for you. Um, so I do think it's a little bit of fear, but I guess what I would say is, try not to be scared. Try to be brave. Pull your head out of the sand a little bit. When you have transition, when you are 52 years old and you wake up and you go, oh my gosh, how am I going to replace my income? I call that crunch time. Those are the times where you're going to be most open to having conversations with me, because you're like, oh no, we got to deal with this, right? Let's get real. I need to be serious about it. And that's the most fun for me, because the client is actually interested and engaged.
Yeah. And to maybe take some of that unknown out of it, would you maybe explain how you work with clients, or what people can expect when they are facing that, is this crunch time? Do I need to talk to somebody, and what that might look like?
Sure. Um, if you're going through a divorce, um, I look at that. There's a couple different phases. Before you get to your attorney, you need to assess what you have. What do you and your spouse have? Understand what the assets are, so that you can have an intelligent conversation with your attorney. So, and then I want to hear what the attorney has to say about the number of years you've been married and what you can expect as the best case scenario on a settlement, so that we can then look at your assets and decide what your life is going to look like after, financially,
Mm-hmm.
and how can you live and manage that, so you don't leave money on the table. I'm a big advocate for empowering whatever party, whatever side of it is. Let's be equitable, but let's also make sure we don't give up too soon and leave money there. So that's on the divorce side. So oftentimes there's a triage, kind of, that's the consulting time where we get you through those things, help you understand what you have, understand, do I want to keep the IRAs? Do I want to keep the house? What's that going to do for my life? What's that going to feel like, look like? And we'll help you
Yeah.
figure that out.
Yeah.
And then, business people who are been working, building assets, accumulating things here and there, have, retirement plans in different places, have some assets, and they're getting in that 5 to 10 year period before they retire. Well, we
Mm.
need to be having some serious conversations. Are you selling your business? Are you selling your practice? Is it saleable? What kind of revenues are you generating from it? These may be your best earning years. So what can we do to strategize to help you from a tax perspective?
Yeah.
So that to me is, again, nerdy. It's fun, right? I get
Yeah.
I get excited about it. But my job is really to work with the client, and we're fiduciaries. I have to advocate for the client's best interest, educate them about all their different options, and act as a fiduciary to explain, this isn't the best idea for you, and here's why, right?
Yeah.
XYZ is probably the best solution for you. In the end, the client's going to choose. But if you don't take what I'm explaining is the best option for you, we're going to document that, right? We need to make sure that we're crystal clear about it, because I want to make sure that you're doing the best thing for yourself and your family.
What are some of the pitfalls or maybe common mistakes that you see uh, someone either going through a divorce or preparing to go through a divorce make?
Well, you probably have the same experience, Erin, when you meet people and they learn what you do, and they have been through a divorce, and they say to you, "Where were you when I was going through this?"
Yeah.
And it's the biggest mistake, I think, is putting your head in the sand, right? Not gaining appropriate knowledge, not making sure that, you need to make sure that you have the right attorney. You need to make sure that you understand all the different parts of the assets, and be as reasonable as you can, as equitable as you can through the process. Of course, if you have, the extreme side, you have a narcissistic spouse, you have, a really aggressive, toxic divorce situation, you need that kind of attorney who's gonna help you facilitate through that.
Right.
And you probably need emotional support too. I like to say it takes a village
Yeah.
to get through a divorce. So I think the biggest mistake is leaving money on the table and putting your head in the sand.
Yeah. And to your point of, where were you when people say that maybe when they first meet you? I do hear a lot of, I wish I had talked to you earlier. I wish I had known about your services earlier. And I think a good takeaway there is it's hard when your head is in the sand for many different reasons, right? Uh, We tend to forget about, not forget, but sometimes we can overlook the emotional aspect of what you're facing and you can freeze. That might be why your head's in the sand, or there just may be many different reasons. But trying to pull yourself out of that emotional aspect, but talking to somebody early on, doesn't mean you have to make decisions right now, but talking to somebody like you early on so that maybe it takes away some of the pressure, the unknown, the regret that they didn't find you earlier. I'm always encouraging people. Yes, it's a hard topic to plan for the future. It's a hard topic to contemplate your own divorce, but the more resources you have, the more knowledge you have, the better you're going to face it and the less likely you'll leave money on the table.
Yeah, and I think it will be less scary. Knowledge, we say knowledge is power. Well, it is. Once you have context around which you can make better decisions, not be reactive. And divorce is it's at the top of the food chain as far as emotional stressors and anxiety-ridden events in your life. So it is helpful, and I think productive to have those support mechanisms in place. Have your attorney, and be crystal clear on what your path is and what you're trying to accomplish. Have your advisor who can help, your financial person who can help you consider those different options, because emotionally you may want to stay in the family home, but financially it really may not make any sense. You may be stuck in the
Yeah.
house and house poor. And
Yeah.
I like to say your husband, your ex
Ah,
your husband will be taking the kids out to eat and do fun things, but you don't have the resources because you're stuck in the house with being house poor. So we
yeah.
really need to balance those things out and be clear about the process there and what your life's going to look like after.
Yeah, because definitely when I see clients on the other side of it, maybe they made a quick financial decision to get out of a stressful divorce. Okay. And then I see that bitterness is starting to settle in because the number one thing that people come back to me, not number one, but it's close to the top, and they come back to me after a divorce is, I'm the one that is maintaining this house. I'm the one that is making sure the kids do everything at home. I'm the one who's watching my budget. And look at Disney dad, or look at the other person who gets to have all the fun.
Yep.
And sometimes that's just a legitimate illustration that occurs in family dynamics, but I do see it more than not that it is, maybe we made a quick financial decision that didn't really map into what you wanted for yourself and what you wanted for your children and how you envisioned this new chapter of your life. And so, um, knowledge is power. Talking to others, trying to redefine what your immediate goals are and focusing on the future. It sounds like a lot, but it's really important. It's really
You,
important to not have that regret or that bitterness of, why am I in the spot I'm in now?
you're exactly right. And unfortunately, too many times we have those conversations after the fact,
Yeah.
right? And so you're exactly right. If you can just have those kind of, what do you need now to be safe and feel comfortable and have your kids be in a good space, and then what's the interim plan and what's it look like over here? Because once you're done, it's a whole big mess to go back in, as you
Yeah.
well know.
And what a lot of people, and perhaps some of my listeners, don't realize is that when you hire an attorney, technically our job is just to get you divorced.
Yep.
Okay. Our job isn't necessarily being your financial planner, being your therapist, being, all of these other roles that are very important. But if you just hire an attorney and say, I need to get divorced and I want to split everything 50-50 and I want to keep the house. Okay, we're going to write up the legal documents and we'll get you divorced. But there isn't much planning. We just know it's something that's equitable, something that'll get approved by the court, and we move forward. Um, And then, like you said, it's usually after the fact that people will say, well, I don't know if I should have done it that way. So I encourage everybody listening, like Jennifer's saying as well, perhaps plan early. And if you feel time's not on your side, just make sure you're planning. There is a way to slow down the process so that you have knowledge and so that you can consider your options. Or if you get an offer to resolve your divorce, press pause, talk to Jennifer, talk to a financial planner and say, is this in my best interest? What can we tweak? What can we revise here? But there's always opportunities, even when you're feeling like you're in the most stressful part of the divorce, to press pause, even if it's for a week, even if it's just to have a hour or two session with somebody to have another set of eyes on it.
No doubt there are always pieces that um, I think almost always, you can't say every time, but there are almost always things that we can highlight or add to that will contribute to a better outcome for you, right? Thinking about what the, not just the division of assets, but how is it gonna apply to your life?
Yeah.
And what that's gonna do, look, feel, and taste like in your new life after divorce, right?
Hmm. Hmm. And it's always hard, at least what I've noticed is, I can tell people a roadmap of their divorce. I can tell them it's very important to add Jennifer Lee as part of your team. She's invaluable. She will help you out here. It's one thing to tell people, it's another thing for maybe people to ask for help or to be receptive to that information. So I always like to leave people that are listening with tips and tools. What can they do at home first, perhaps, to help guide them to making a decision of perhaps working with someone like you, Jennifer? Is there something, a takeaway or an activity or some sort of assistance they could do at home to raise their awareness about the need for speaking with someone like you?
Sure. Well, I mean, there's always the option of reading the book, because it does have practical application. This is something that I go through with every client.
Yeah,
And I'm happy to provide a couple chapters in terms of the ones that we're discussing to your listeners.
oh, that'd be great.
One of those is financial planning is simple. So what do you have versus what do you want? It's important to get clear, because I don't think people generally, happily married couples, single people, business people, have taken the time to even flesh that out. What do you want? What do you want your money to do for you? Because maybe your money can facilitate that now. Maybe you don't have to wait another 15 years, or maybe you have to actually wait 20 years because you haven't been saving enough. So to be clear about what your goals and aspirations and dreams are, and then understanding what you have at your discretion. So when I say what's your discretion, people get nervous and they say, I don't like to budget. I don't want to put money aside. I don't want to be confined. I like to live like an American, and I like to spend and do what I want to do. Don't restrict me. Well,
Yeah.
I'm not a person who wants to restrict anybody. If I want to get something that's out of my regular realm of affordability, I'm going to figure out a way, either through a side hustle or another opportunity, where I can get to that dream or that goal, right?
Mhm.
So clients can do that as well, but you need to understand, what do you have to work with? So you have income coming in, especially in a divorce situation or the sale of a business situation. You've got assets. What does that generate? What kind of income do you have coming into your household? What are your fixed expenses? Your house, your auto, your food, your cell phone, the things that you need to pay. That's not necessarily Netflix, Disney Plus, Paramount Plus, all those different subscriptions, right? Those are discretionary. So you look at what your fixed things are, and then you have this chunk of money. And you say, well, what do I want to do with that? How much of that is toward my retirement? How much of that is toward my short-term goals? How much of that is fun because I feel like doing it? Most of us just feel like doing it, and then you don't have any savings. So planning in advance, I think, and being awake when it comes, being conscious about your spending when it comes to your money is pretty important.
Yeah, I love that. Being awake, right? Being knowledgeable, being awake, being empowered to make the right decisions and identifying what your goals are. Those are very important.
Being consciously aware of what you're spending.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I love that, and I love that you've offered to provide a sample of this book, which within its pages there are perhaps, if I could call them worksheets, not necessarily, but you can make notes, and there's some exercises in here to make you awake, to raise your awareness and more conscious about what you are spending or what you are doing, and what your future goals are. So um, I just think this is such a good resource for people that, for various reasons, are facing a life challenge. For our listeners facing a divorce, or you're in the middle of a divorce and you want to take more control over how you're going to meet your future goals. You should check out this book, Squeeze the Juice. I will include below a sample chapter, if that is all right with you, Jennifer,
Absolutely.
so that people can get started on some of these exercises and some of these powerful tools to help them realign what they want for their future based on what they're doing now and what they could be doing now.
Terrific.
So, any final tips that you have? Any quick tips that you might have, if there was one thing they should take away from listening to this, or for planning for their future? Is there one thing that we could focus on?
Well, don't be scared, right?
Yeah.
This book is written so that it's written for the non-moneyed person. So it's written for somebody who's like, I don't really want to deal with this subject. It's not my aptitude. I'm not interested. I promise it won't hurt. It's a 2-hour read, and you'll at worst you'll learn one or two things that you can just implement, and that's it. And you'll move on in your financial life. At best, you'll go, oh my gosh, I need to dig into this and fill out these worksheets and do all those different components. But don't be scared. Just reach out, talk to your friends, talk to your colleagues, interview different people so that you can get a comfort level and an aptitude around your finances in your world, and go squeeze some juice.
There you go. Well, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom, and helping just dispel some of the fear that we can face when we are thinking about financial planning. And for those of us that maybe don't have it in our blood like you do, we can rely on you to help us through some of these troubling times, but let us know we'll be all right in the end. So thank you again for this. And again, I'll leave that tool and resource down in the description of the video. And again, Jennifer, thank you so much for all that you do. And thank you for being here to help our listeners face things with a bit more confidence and a bit more knowledge.
Thanks for having me, Erin. Appreciate it.